show number 132. I guess everyone's going to be wondering what happened, what I'm wearing a patch. No, I didn't get back from Halloween. I actually developed third nerve palsy in my eye. So everyone kind of pray for me, and we're going to tough it out. The doctors tell me it'll be all right in about 3 months. So we'll see. Let's get the show going, fellas. All right. Welcome, like I said, Don and Larry. Tonight, I believe that it cannot be underestimated how important this show is tonight. And Larry's been talking to me about it, and it's easy to miss the cream on top of what's going to go down tonight. So I believe this may go down as one of our top shows of all time. That's my prediction. So Larry, go ahead and tell us about Jerry Coley, and then we'll play the audio, and I'll actually scroll the transcript as we go by.
Hey, Gary, I hope you get better soon. Yeah, we've been talking about this Jerry Coley thing because Black Op Radio posted an interview. Well, not really an interview, but maybe. Where Jerry Coley talked about his experience the weekend of the assassination and beyond. And I consider this to be one of the most important witnesses to come forth in the last probably 50 years, Jim. Gary and Don here tonight, we're going to listen to what he had to say. I've edited it a little bit so that it will run faster, and we've transcribed the interview, but we're pressed for time, and we got a lot of stuff to present tonight, so let's get cracking here.
All right, let's get going.
The department. I usually got there about 8 o'clock. We had a little cafeteria. And on Friday, I would go down, and my cohort who handles drug advertising with me, Don Campbell, he and I usually would meet for coffee. And on Fridays, usually Jack Ruby would come in to place his weekend advertising, and he would join us for coffee. And that Friday morning, he did, on November the 22nd, about 8 o'clock or so. When I got there, he was in the cafeteria with Don Campbell. They were having coffee. I sat down with him. Jack was his usual self. He liked to talk about his strippers and how tough he was. And he flashed his brass knuckles that he had in his suit coat and bragged about toughness. But he usually came in and he there along with another nightclub he owned, and he always paid in cash, and he kept the money rolled up in his pocket. And he always bragged about the money he had and about the gun he carried under the front seat of his car. But that was a normal morning, and I left the coffee shop, I guess, and came on to my office. Left my office about 9 o'clock to go out and make my advertising calls. I came back into the office probably sometime after 11 o'clock, and Jack Ruby was still sitting at John Noonan's desk, who sat directly behind me. John handled the downtown advertising where his club was. About 11:30 or so, I got Charlie Mulkia, one of my advertising friends, and we went down to our personnel office to redraw some parking spaces they were doing that day, and then walked 3.5 blocks over to try to get a good spot on the corner of Main and Houston to watch the parade as it come by and turn there. We couldn't get that spot on the corner of Main and Elm. It was already too crowded, so we moved down about halfway down Houston Street from the corner of Main, between Main and Elm, in front of the county jail there, and they were just unloading a no parking sign set in a big concrete bowl there. So I got up on that concrete so I could see over the crowd and had a good view. In just about a few minutes, about 12:20 by then, across the street on Houston, on the sidewalk in front of this reflecting pool that's there, a man had an epileptic fit, and I remember him writhing around on the ground and just almost out of nowhere, here comes this ambulance, turned the corner off, loaded the man in there, and took off down Houston Street over the Houston Street viaduct towards Methodist Hospital, we supposed. And the thing I remember so much about it now then was that of all the documentaries that we've seen on JFK that I have and the shows, there's only been one that depicted that thing that happened. And I was really impressed by that particular showing. But in any case, right after that happened, within seemed like a minute, 2 or 3 minutes, the parade came, passed by in front, and I remember Jackie and waving and seeing the president. And as they turned the corner on Elm Street in front of us, which is a half a block down, and started down that Elm Street in front of the book depository, we heard all these noises, and I couldn't tell you to this day. I couldn't then where there was 1 shot, 10 or 5 or whatever. It was just an echoing noise. To me, there was no definite gunshots, and I did not recall any 3 shots. It was echoing. So, in any case, I crossed Houston Street between some parade cars over to that reflecting pool, and I could see people running down towards the grassy knoll and the railroad tracks. So I started down the Esplanade, which part of it runs parallel to the book depository down towards that fence. And down when I got nearly to the fence, a policeman in brown, we call them county mounties in Dallas, at that time stopped me, and he had a shotgun. And Charlie was behind me, and he said, "Where do you guys think you're going?" He said, "We're going back here where all these people are running," which was back towards the fence in this parking lot or that area on the top grassy knoll. He told us to get the hell out of there. So Charlie, I guess, left me at that point. I don't know where he went, but I went ahead and started down that Esplanade, made a left, started down towards beside the picket fence corner there, and at the top of those steps that go down the grassy knoll. And it was there that I saw people laying all over in the median grass between there, a couple of motorcycles laying on the side of the hill, people and police running up towards the picket fence to the right of me. I looked down at the top of those steps. Before you take this top step was a huge puddle that I thought was blood. So I walked on down, around it, down the steps, and I saw people in the median between Main and Elm, laying on the grass, people crying. I looked back and I could still see people headed all around the grassy knoll in that area. And no one was going towards that book depository at that time. No one. There was no one headed that direction. So I rushed on back to the news to see if I could find out something. And as I come in the door, by then it must have been 1:45, maybe a little bit later than that. Jack Ruby was still at Noonan's desk. And I said to someone that Connolly might have been shot, and maybe even the president. I remember Jack Ruby jumped up then and ran back to our corner office. Dick Jeffries at that time was our promotion director. He ran into the secretary's desk there. He could look out the window directly down at that assassination site. And I remember him on the phone crying and talking. Well, about that time I saw Jim Hood, who was our ad department photographer. And I went up to him and I said, "Jim, I think I've seen some blood or something down there where all this stuff took place." And he said, "Well, let me get my camera. We'll go back down there." So he got his camera and we rushed back down there. It was probably 1 or a little after by then. And everyone was gathered up around the book depository there. We came up to this blood area, which now was all crinkly, like it coagulated a little. And he put his little pinky on his right hand into that, and he stuck his tongue to it. He said, "Well, that's blood." and he made a photo with his reflex camera. We came on back to the news. And of course, we heard then that the president had been shot and all this. So it was Sunday, I guess, when I was home then, watching television as they were getting ready to transfer Oswald from the city jail to the county jail. And when Jack Ruby stepped forward with that hat on he had and that dark suit, I recognized it instantly as he shot him. Well, I come into the office Monday morning, and Hugh Ainsworth, who was a news reporter, was there talking to Don. And Don turned around and said, Coley there was at breakfast with me. And me and Jack, and we all sat there and talked that morning. And I said, let's go back over, Jim, this morning and look at that blood. We went back over, and there was no stain to be found anywhere. It was like someone had cleaned it off very thoroughly. And then I got busy in all my daily work that I had. Nothing else happened till Tuesday a.m. The next morning when I came in, and someone told me that Hugh Ainsworth in our Bulldog edition, which is printed about, back then about 9 o'clock. They were printed for newsstand sales and downtown honor box sales. There was a story written by Hugh that said Coley at the news, and had visited with Jack Ruby that morning. Someone then showed me that edition. I looked at it, and I said, wow. It wasn't 30 minutes later while I was preparing to go out, my wife called, and she was hysterical on the phone, and she said, I've just received 2 threatening phone calls. They both have said, if you don't shut your mouth, they're going to kill me and our 2 kids, a boy and a girl I had at the time. And I said, what are you talking about, Chuck? She said, that's what they said. I said, it's some quack. I don't know anything. I haven't said anything. So I made my morning run, and I got back probably about 10:30 that morning. At that time, as I sat down to begin working on my ads, 2 men came up in dark suits. They kind of flashed a green ID card and said, we're the FBI. Are you Coley at the news? That was mentioned in a story this morning. And I said, well, I'm Jerry Coley. He said, did you have coffee with Jack Ruby Friday morning? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, we want to talk to you in private. So I said, wait just a minute. So I went to the back of the room to our vice president's office, and I said, Si, I'm scared. Would you verify who these people are? So Cy Wagner came up. He said, you sit down in my office and I'll go up and talk to him. He went up and talked with these 2 men, and he came back in a few minutes and said, Jerry, they're okay. Go ahead and talk to them. So they said, where can we meet in private? And I said, well, we got a conference room just up here in the front of the room. So they said, let's go in there and talk. So I went in, and one of them, the taller guy, was doing all the questions. The other one was looked like shorthand notes. I couldn't tell what he was doing there for sure. And he asked me to talk about that morning with Jack Ruby. And I did. And about when I was down at the parade area, and then I said, I want to ask you a question. And the guy taking notes said, well, wait a minute. We're not here to answer questions. We're here to ask in a rough kind of way. And I said, well, it's about some blood I saw there. Well, right away, the man interviewing said, tell me about this blood. So I told him what I had seen, and that one of my advertising photographers had made a picture of it. And he said, is he here now? And I said, yes. He said, just out at the door here. He said, go get him. Get his camera, his negatives, and any positives that he's got. And you come back in here. So I went up to Jim's desk. I said, Jim, can you please come in here with me and bring your camera and your negative? Did you print that piece out? He said, I just printed out that photo this morning. He said, I don't have right way in that photographic lab. The news department has first priority with all that's been going on. I haven't been able to print that picture. He said, but I just did this morning. And I said, well, get it and come in here. So he brought the camera, the negative, and the positive was in a brown envelope. The FBI man, we went in and he introduced himself and they had us sit down. The FBI who was doing the question, man, took the negative and then he took the envelope and opened it up and looked at the print. And that was the first time I had seen the print. It was just a print of the blood stain there or the blood there on top of the steps. And he wanted to know if there were any more prints made. And Jim said, no, I've just been able to make that one this morning. So then they turned and had some kind of muffled conversation between themselves. And it seemed like after an eternity as they stood there, probably 2 or 3 minutes, but the big guy stood up and the other one did too. And he put everything in the bag, put them under his arm, and he said, boys, this conversation never took place, if you know what we mean. And they walked out the door and left. Jim and I stood in that conference room, and he said, what the hell is going on here? What have you got me into? And I said, Jim, I don't know what's going on. I just know that my wife's being threatened. He said, what? I said, yeah. He said, well, what are you saying? I said, I'm not talking to anybody, Jim. He said, then you shut your mouth and I'm going to shut mine. And let's don't talk about this blood mess anymore. I said, I won't. Well, we didn't. It wasn't long after that, a few days after that, I received a subpoena to Jack Ruby's trial. And on the subpoena, which I still have, it's addressed to Coley at the News, which I guess was taken from that news story that ran in a 2-star edition on me. I don't know when it was, in the 70s, sometime after that, Unsolved Mysteries, an NBC production, called and said, we would like to meet with you after work and listen to your story about Jack Ruby that morning and your association with him. And I said, fine. So they came that afternoon, about 6. About 9 o'clock, they took a short break. And I called my wife to tell her it was still going on. And I said, you know what? Everybody that could corroborate my story about the blood now is dead. Jim Hood, Cy Wagner, Don Campbell. I said, you know, we've never talked about it. I just got to tell somebody and get it off. Let it be open. She panicked. She said, don't do that. And I said, well, you know, if I talk about this, they'll think, well, at the worst, I'm some kind of nut. Nobody's going to believe me, but at least I've told it. Well, I did. And they really flipped out. They said, we want to come back the next morning. We want to go over to where this happened. And they did. I met them and we went over there. This thing went on all morning long. And finally they said, okay, it's a wrap. We'll call you when we get back to California and give you the show date for we're going to run this. Well, they called us, seemed like 2 or 3 days later, and says, we can't use that blood story. We couldn't substantiate it. And I said, I told you that when I told you the story. That's why I told it to you. So they said, well, we can only use the other part about Jack Ruby. Then after that, I've been interviewed by the Japanese out of Tokyo, Japan. They came over and talked. Of course, they had all kind of wild theories. I don't advance a theory in what I've seen, other than I know that what I saw, it scared me to death. I know my wife was threatened 3 times on the phone for me to shut up, which I hadn't said anything other than that story that you had written about me talking with Jack Ruby that morning. And I know that when this happened, I was there. I saw the people run towards that picket fence. No one ran towards the book depository. And that's all I know firsthand, sir.
I think that's really a fascinating interview, and I don't think Leno Sanik quite appreciated what he had there. And I'll say it's obvious to me that it was the FBI who was calling his wife to issue those threats, that they were playing both sides, good cop, bad cop. It's becoming increasingly obvious what is the modus operandi of the FBI. And they probably took out Hood's plane using electromagnetic pulse. That's what they did with Wellstone plane. It could have caused the engine to shut off, go into idle. It was that kind of a crash, it appears to me, already, having done a great deal on Wellstone. Larry.
Yeah.
Well, this is a fascinating interview here, what this man has to say, because he touches on so many different aspects of the assassination, Jim. For example, he confirms that the motorcycle cops, at least two, he says cops in plural, went up the hill. You know, just like that image that was flashed there, that was taken from Executive Action, which came out, I remember, 1972, 1971. And which Mark Lane was a consultant for that movie, and they showed that part. And we know now that Douglas Jackson ran up the knoll with his motorcycle, and so many other things. I think that maybe because he didn't have enough time, but if Coley only took about 20 minutes to get back to the Dallas Morning News, then if you compare that with Altgens, who stayed probably a little even longer, for him to have reached the Dallas Morning News, and Coley is what, 24, 25 years old at the time, and Altgens is 41, you know. So they want us to believe that Altgens had his photograph running on the wire by 12:57, says the FBI. 103 says the other documents that we have seen. So there's just no way that Altgens could have reached the Dallas Morning News. Another thing, Coley would have been privy to a lot of the things going on at the Dallas Morning News that afternoon and that weekend, especially internally, what was going on in that photo lab, okay, and all these interesting things, you know, that we surmised that happened there, you know, that weekend.
And look at the corrupt role of Hugh Ainsworth, whom we'd already fingered as one of the dirty guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there just one place that Hugh Ainsworth was not at?
From day one. Yeah, I mean, this is from day one.
Oh, so he was working for the CIA?
From day one, you know.
He was working for the CIA. I mean, we know how they've infested our media. Here's a guy who was on the scene. He knew where he should be in advance because they had a plan, and he was following the script.
Yeah, let me go ahead and say it. He was in Dealey Plaza. He was at the Tippett shooting. He was in the Dallas garage when he shot Oswald. And there's one other one that I can't think of at the moment.
You know what's terrifying is people have thought he was an admirable man all this time when he was corrupt and complicit in the assassination of
it may have just been a coincidence, Jim. That he was in all these places where everything was going on.
Thanks, Don. We appreciate your wisdom.
Now, this thing about the blood up
it's a coincidence of all those elements being present at ground zero and those correlations and quantities, Don. That's just a coincidence.
Yeah, it's just like regular soil in the Northeast.
Just like regular soil.
Yeah, you know,
and the blood turns into soda pop, you know.
Yeah.
The guy's a POS.
Not only that, Jim, if you go and read Mal Couch's testimony in the Warren Commission, this isn't Mal Couch. This is official testimony, and he says clearly that was blood. He even estimated the size of the pool of blood to be between 8 and 10 inches around.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were carefully going around it, not to step in the blood. Okay, so. Yeah. And then Jean Hill goes up there, and she says it's blood, you know?
Yeah. Well, he thought he had lost corroborating evidence, but there was quite a bit of it around. Gary, you don't want to hide. You look real spiffy with your patch.
Yeah, my mom said, well, at least you look like Yul Brynner now. So I said, it's not making me feel...
Right, that's right. You took off your cap.
And another thing about this Coley and his naivete, you know, he told the FBI about the pool of blood, you know, and who knows, had he not mentioned anything about that, you know, this whole thing would have turned in a different direction. But that's just one of those things.
If he hadn't mentioned the blood, he would have been home free.
All right, so Larry, I mean, I know that Bill Newman talked about the blood. How many people have talked about it, and what does it really mean?
Well,
I mean, we all know that this is one of the most closely guarded secrets that has been almost washed aside from almost all JFK investigation.
Well, let me just mention that there was a little AP story that weekend about a Secret Service man having died that day, and the radio logs of the Dallas Police Department also mentioned that a Secret Service man had told another Dallas Police Department cop that over his teletype he received the information of Secret Service man having died or having been shot.
But Larry, as you know, there were no Secret Service. Therefore,
that's right.
It was one of the bad guys who had fake Secret Service credentials prepared by Chauncey Marvin Holt.
That's absolutely.
So one of the shooters got whacked.
Yes. Somebody.
One of the shooters or their spotter, whatever. I mean, it was part of the hit team that got whacked.
Yeah, and it was obviously a fire that was returned, and then this fellow ends up at Parkland Hospital of all places, where Bertha Lozano sees him being rolled up in a stretcher, in a suit, okay, with his head covered with a suit coat, and they wheel him in. They do some blood work on him, and they don't admit him. They don't start any type of records for the man, and then he disappears. Okay, and this is something that is also in the Warren Commission, and also there was a story about a rogue ambulance going around, supposedly one of these station wagons that doubled as ambulances, lost, and then over the radio logs you can follow what's going on, where some of the cops are puzzled over this ambulance.
This guy is a very intelligent guy with a good memory.
That's right.
And he's articulate. He's very specific.
Exactly.
He hasn't lost his tongue. But I guarantee you it was the FBI calling his wife. They knew who he was. They always referred to him the same way.
Oh yeah. They were on damage control right away, and that's one of the best ways to do it by threatening your family.
We're losing your voice, Larry. Don, did you want to add some comment?
I remember hearing the story about the blood a few years ago, and it kind of was a blip on the radar, and then it went away.
That's right.
Well, if you didn't have this interview, you would never know. I mean, the whole story here. This guy's a wonderful source of information.
He ties up a lot of loose ends, Jim.
Yeah, and where Jack was, and he made the great point that if Jack had so much affection for JFK, why didn't he go a few blocks to watch him in the motorcade?
But he also leaves a window of opportunity for Jack to have gone back and forth to Dealey Plaza.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Whether he did is another question.
Right.
What would you have thought he was doing in Dealey Plaza, though?
Well, a lot of people say that he was there, that he handed Lee Oswald a gun about, 10 or 15 minutes, 10 minutes after the assassination outside of the depository. There's a story about him, being on the street there, So, this Coley guy gives you, he really narrows down the time window there for Jack Ruby as far as where he was and what he was doing that day.
Good stuff.
Oh yeah, this is one of the this is an incredibly important interview. What this man has to say.
You think it's consistent with this characterization that he could have been in the doorway area of the book depository, the man in the fedora?
Who knows?
Okay, Larry, you got some sensational stuff here with you're becoming the master blender.
Well, you have the presentation, Jim. It's not individual slides.
No, Gary's got it.
Yeah, but this isn't the presentation. These are individual slides.
Yeah, maybe Peter Jennings would want to contact you and do it.
Yeah, help out.
This isn't what we're looking for, Gary. You're looking for the PPT, which has all the slides.
Oh, okay.
What's right there on your desktop? And go full screen.
Yeah.
View slideshow.
Hold on.
Play the slideshow,
It's under view, yes. View.
To the right. No. right. It says slideshow to the right.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Okay, we're ready.
Brilliant.
Rock on.
Again, the Alton 6 photograph. And this isn't even the entire photograph. It's been cropped to the left, and well, we've been over that many times.
This is such a fascinating photograph.
Yeah, yes, it is. And now with our digital computer graphics capabilities offered by so many programs, that we're going to just briefly go, you know, tell our audience here what the meaning of all this is, because this week we use as a reference was known as a reference image. And a reference image in 3D graphics programming allows us to set objects. For example, the limo is an object, individual objects within the scene, and the motorcycles are objects, okay? And once we have these in 3D space, then we can look around the scene and look at everything in perspective from different areas, different cameras. What you do is you set up cameras, and then depending on what you want to do, you can look at the scene around from all these different perspectives. Go ahead, next slide.
So I was going to say, we're your Alton 6 leader. You know, nobody breaks down the Alton 6 more than the new JFK show.
Yeah, it's still got a lot of secrets to, yeah, that's right, to reveal. And this is Blender. This is, you know, the top of, right now, the most used, because it's open source. Okay, and it's got a worldwide base of support, and you know, the features. What you're seeing here is not a film of somebody dressed up in that spacesuit. It's actually computer graphics. Okay, the whole thing, everything that you see there is computer graphics. So the capabilities of this program are just incredible. The only thing is
actually stunning.
Yeah, yeah, and so you can create movies, you can create anything. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of cartoon movies that are made with Blender, you know, and the thing about Blender though is you have to go to school to learn it, you know, because it's quite
yeah, this is
sophisticated.
It's got to be one of the most difficult programs to operate that there is.
Well, it's only.
It's a good thing we got our ace, Larry Rivera, on the job.
Yeah,
well, I know, but a fraction. If you go to YouTube, you know, since you're going to be, a lot of people are going to be watching this, just go right there on YouTube and run a search on Blender, on whatever. You know, you can do anything from architecture, you know, do all kinds of computer graphics, you know. But the learning curve is a little bit steep, okay? You have to do a lot of tutorials, you know, but it all depends, you know, on where you go for tutorials, because you have to follow them in order to get good at Blender. You know, I'm just scratching the surface, you know, but some of the stuff I've been able to do is...
Well, it's fantastic you have it at this time.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about the reference image, okay? And within the reference image, we can set these objects. And what I did is I just went and there's another program by the name of SketchUp, you know, and this one is used by a lot of architects. And there's this warehouse where they have all kinds of models that are people have already made up. Okay, and I went in there, you know, it's like a catalog, you know, and it's for free. It's a warehouse. And I went down and I went there and I downloaded a limo, a Ford Lincoln Continental. It happens to be a 1965 convertible, which is close enough for what we want to do, okay? And the motorcycles are Harleys. The only thing that they're missing is the windshield, okay? But by and large, they overlay almost perfectly on the reference image that I was just mentioning here. And now once I have these objects in place, now they're in 3D space. Now I can go ahead and do all kinds of stuff, you know, in different perspectives. And we're going to see now what I mean. Now within Blender, you can set the focal point of the scene. And in fact, in multiple cameras, you can have different focal points and telephoto lens, you know, set up on all the different cameras, whichever one you want to look at the scene through at the time. And I'll briefly go over that here in a moment here. Go ahead, Gary. Okay, these are the different cameras that we have set up here. And if you look down here, is on the left, okay, Okay, the scene is coming here top to bottom, okay? And I've set up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cameras. And the two most important ones here, obviously, are Zapruder to the left and Algins at the bottom there, because the limo is coming from top to bottom. That plane, that rectangular plane there that you see, it's only there so that the shadows, you can see the shadows, how they are cast. Okay, because the scene hasn't been finished. This is just starting off, okay? And I went ahead and I put a couple more cameras, for example, overhead in front and overhead to the right. And then I went to the rear, more or less where Douglas Jackson was riding. And then to the right, the Knicks and much more areas, you know, so we can see the perspective of what they would have been seeing at the time that the Algin 6 was taken, which is equivalent to Zapruder frame 255, okay? And that's what we're with here. We're working with the Algin 6 and the Zapruder frame 255. Go ahead. Now, this is a very important slide. This frame of the Zapruder film, I believe, is in the 160s or maybe early 170s. And what you see, the prominent reflection on the side of the limousine. And I was also looking at the photograph that we've talked about here before, the Cisco image, the one that you have on Assassination Science on the cover, Jim.
Yeah.
If you look at that photo, you'll see how impeccably waxed and shiny that limo is. Okay.
Yeah.
JFK limo, and that's in that photograph, which is on Main Street. Now, as we look at the Zapruder film, this is before the Stemmons Freeway sign. Okay, and this is what it should be like throughout the film. Okay, now
you mean that the side of the vehicle should be reflective?
Exactly. Of anything, even the pavement. If you look closely, you'll see that the pavement is reflected off of the side of the limousine, and you can see the motorcycle is reflected. You know, and this is when the limo is quite far away from Zapruder. Okay, so you should imagine that as the limo got closer and closer to Zapruder, those images would have been, you know, more visible, more noticeable there. So
yeah, it's like a mirror.
Yeah. Okay. So and go ahead. So that's important in what we're going to show here now. This is
it was a presidential limousine, so of course it's going to be polished up.
That's right. That's right. Now this is our scene when we take out the reference image, when we eliminate it, and as you can see, and Martin on the right, and the motorcycle on the left is Shaney. Okay, and this is exactly where the positions are, according to the perspective offered by Ike Algin. Oh, another thing that I wanted to show, Gary, if you can you go back a couple of slides? There. Okay. See Algin's down at the bottom. What this scene tells us is that Algin's was more in the street than on the curb or in the infield. Okay, and it also shows how slow that motorcade was actually going. If you consider that Algins took 7 photographs that we know of. I know there were more.
Well, he wasn't sure he made the 7th. Frankly, I think that's a fake. But go ahead.
Yeah. And he was at the intersection of Main and Houston, and he's got time enough at 41 years old to walk or jog across the infield and set himself up on the south curb of Elm Street to take the Algin 6 photograph. So as the motorcade slowly, very slowly went around the bend of Elm, down Elm Street, and when he finally gets into position for the Algin 6 photograph, which is this position, if you look here, you'll see that he's almost right in the middle of the street. At least he's in the middle of the left lane of Elm Street, you know, the south side of Elm Street. At least he's not on the curb. You see him on the curb later on, if that's really him.
Oh, you see it put up on the grass, yeah.
On the grass, right. In the Zapruder film, around frames 340.
But then they have Gene Hill and Mary Mormon on the grass too.
Absolutely.
They were in this
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. Exactly. So that's why this is important, Jim, because with this technique, we can set the position of Altgens from where he took the photograph. That's why this blender is so incredibly efficient, you know. And another thing, if you look at the length of the camera at the bottom, you see it's longer. Okay, what that means is that telephoto lens is active on that camera. Okay, so that's and Zapruder's also. Okay, now go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say, do they normally let photographers out in the middle of the street in front of a presidential motorcade like that?
Well, that's what
there was no security done anywhere in this motorcade, none.
Well,
look at the crowd spilling 12 feet out by that bus when the limo is right beside it. And an assassin with a handgun could have shot JFK.
That's right.
There was no security in Dallas, period.
Well, and it's going that slow, Jim, where he's down Elm Street, you know, and he's
Don makes the point that there should have not been all this lack of security. I mean, he shouldn't have been able to be out there. I mean, there was supposed to be a flatbed truck in front of the presidential limo with all the photographers and their cameras and all their equipment. So,
which we noticed it during the Trump inauguration that those trucks were right there, weren't they?
You know, anyway. I didn't pay attention to that, Larry. I've got to go back and take a look. I watched the whole bloody thing.
Yeah. I noticed that they had those press trucks, you know, right there with his limo.
Very good.
Okay, now this is an overhead view of that scene that we just set of the Altgens 6 photograph. What this shows is, you know, obviously Hargis and Martin on the right, but how close Cheney actually was to the JFK limo, within arm's length almost, you know.
He was right beside Jack.
That's right.
Hey, could have touched him with his arm.
That's right. That's right. Go ahead.
Well, okay, I was going to say, just real quick, now, normally the motorcycle isn't that close to the limo, right?
Well, in this case, you know, according to the Altgens 6 photograph, it is. Because all of it, what you're seeing here is the Altgens 6 photograph from different perspectives, seen through different cameras.
Now, is that because the limo was maybe out of position? It took that turn too wide?
No, I think it was. I think it was just going so slow that he was able to. You know, he probably.
Well, that's part of it too. Yeah, it was going slow. It also, I think it's not, as you can see, it's not pointing straight down the street here either.
Oh, no. Forget about the plane is just there to show the shadow.
It's a rough cut, The angles aren't right, though.
Forget about, you know, I haven't even.
If you can orient, you know, if you pulled down the background, you could get the angles better.
I haven't even put the road down yet.
Right.
To the road and set it up and everything. I'm just showing, you know.
You're just blocking it out.
Just sketching here. But go ahead on to the next one, because we've got a lot of very interesting. This is what Nix and much more would have seen at that time. Okay?
Notice the police aren't providing any protection at all.
Well, they told them to stay behind the motorcade.
They told them to ride behind the rear wheels.
Again, This is the Altgens 6 scene from the Nix position, okay, or the much more. And these two are just very rough because I didn't even, I just set it up. But
it's fascinating what you're finding already with this crude arrangement.
Yeah, right. Go ahead to the next one. This is from behind. I love this one because this is what those guys in the Queen Mary would have seen. You know, so probably a little bit closer. But anyway, you see again that Cheney close to the limo on the right, and you've got Hargis and Martin here. And obviously they're not in their saddles here, but
it's an almost baffling lack of symmetry. I mean, it's really interesting.
Well, this is according to, again, Zapruder, the Altgens 6 photograph, which is equal to Z255. Okay, that exact moment seen from the two different perspectives. Okay, but these images are really, and this is our crown jewel, you know, the Z255. And the neat thing about Blender is that anything that's metallic, like the side of the limo, okay, I can program it to mirror any other object that's
Good work, Larry.
Yeah. Okay. And as you can see, not only is the motorcycle, but also the plane, which would be the asphalt, which will later on be plugged in there. But again, I haven't touched anything. The only thing that we have done here is look at the scene from Zapruder's perspective, but by setting the positions first from what we see in the alternate 6 photograph. Like I said, using the alternate 6 as a reference image. So that's why now when we look at this.
Lost your audio, Larry. Repeat. That's
okay.
why.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Now, what I was saying is that how come in the Zapruder film we don't see any of these reflections after the limo comes out?
Yeah, they've been taken out. You're absolutely right.
Simmons freeway sign.
Even a one-eyed man could see that.
I mean, and Beverly Brunson, who proposed this back in 1968, from of which I write an entire chapter in my book, 73 pages. She had told Harold Weisberg in a letter. She said, "Look, that's a paint job." And what's so amazing about Brunson, Jim, is that she never saw the film itself. She was working off of the prints that came out in Life magazine.
Yeah, okay. And you can tell already that they blackened the side.
Yeah.
So it would be non-reflecting.
That's right. And if you look at the film, you'll see.
She's a pretty smart woman, Larry.
Yeah, she was. That's why, and a lot of her theories are being proven correct nowadays. Okay, so then Z255 is equal to alternate 6, and when we finish this exercise here, we see that obviously the Zapruder film has been altered from the. Well, we know it's been heavily altered, but okay, here's Z255. Okay, in comparison, go ahead because I got a really nice one coming up. Where I do an overlay. Now, go ahead. We already
but that's very, very interesting.
The previous one?
Go ahead.
Okay. Now that's the one. Okay, now when we do our overlay and we with the actual frame, okay, we see that despite the sprocket hole, okay, of the film, that motorcycle should have been at least partially, and at best, at least half.
Sure. Reflected in the side of the vehicle.
And even visible in the film. Okay, you see the bike extends beyond the sprocket hole.
Right.
Okay, so that's why using the alternate 6 photograph as a reference image is so important, because it sets the positions of each and every one of the motorcycle cops, and this in itself, Jim, in my mind, this proves that the Zapruder film has been altered. Just here on what I'm showing right now on the screen, right here.
Well, what we're doing is finding more ways in which it has been altered than we had heretofore supposed.
Well, that's another possibility. Why was the motorcycle cop really that close to the limo, or did they mess with the position of the limo in the edited?
Well, it's always been said that he was in the line of fire, and it would have kind of messed up the theory. So
that's another point, that him and or Jackson would have been in the line of fire of a shot from the 6th floor, the southeast window of the 6th floor of the depository. That's a very, very valid point, and we also.
But since no shots were fired from there.
Yeah. Well, I know. For them to propagate the story, they had to eliminate the outriders on that side.
I wonder whether the CIA had Blender in those days.
Well, they do now, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now they can fake a film and it'll be perfect.
That's right. And
it looked like they used an ink pen on the side of the Z film. It really looks like a blue ink pen.
Yeah. I mean, Brunson said it. It's a paint job. She said it, as plain as that. Hey, that's a paint job there on the side, You should see reflections, it should be uniform.
I love this woman. She's marvelous.
Yeah. And
so I guess we got it, huh, fellas?
Yeah, and then the last two are just the same two of the Altgens and the Z255 in relation to each other.
Well, would you believe Unless you want to add a minute, we're right at 1 hour right now.
You got it.
Okay.
All right, Larry Rivera, Jim Fetzer, Don Fox. It's been a great show. We'll see you next time.
Great work by a one-eyed man.
Yeah, trying hard. Trying hard.
We didn't even think it was going to be possible.
Coup d'etat in slow motion, connecting the dots between the assassinations of Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme, JFK, Robert Kennedy, and John Lennon. Now available on Amazon and lightonconspiracies.com. Coup d'etat in slow motion.